Hello everyone, welcome to the first film of the year for number 27, and what an apt film that we have today. One of the longest running debates in the Porsche world is between the last of the air-cooled cars. So you have the 993 that was the golden child for years and years. People always said that that was, without doubt, the most evolved and the best of all the air-cooled 911s. And then you have the 964, which for years was really pilloried and hated as one of the worst 911s. Things have changed now, really. People have actually started to appreciate the 964, and the cars are more or less on par now, I would say, anyway, in terms of appreciation and how much people covet them. And I think price-wise as well, they're pretty much along the same lines. There used to be a time when you could buy one of these, and I got my own 964 for about £10,000, believe it or not, even less, some of them. But nowadays you're looking at around £40,000 to £50,000 for a C4, C2s towards the upper end of that on a 964, and I think more or less similar for the 993s. Now this is an early 964, one of the first C4s, and this is one of the later 993s, so it has a Vario RAM and the 6-speed box with, I think, the longer top gear. So the 964 was a massive jump ahead from the 3.2 that came before. Visually, it was the biggest change in years, so it had new bumpers, it was smoothed over, new wheels, all sorts of things, but mechanically is where it really changed. Not only was there a four-wheel drive system offered for the very first time, but this car actually had ABS. It had traction control. It had power steering. It had a new ventilation system that was much more effective than the old one on the 3.2. Still not brilliant, but much better than they had before. So the 964 was a big step forward, and not all the purists were delighted with that. There's always been a bit of controversy about how good a C4 is versus the C2, etc. Truth is that on the road, unless you're a really canny driver and you're really into that kind of thing, it doesn't get in the way of the C4 system, and certainly if there's rain or snow or anything like that, it is massively better. So as an all year round car, it is fantastic. The 993 is a really pretty car, and they went even further in the way that they changed things. You can see that the back and front end was smoothed over, the front is more raked, so for the first time that 911 silhouette has gone. Now that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because this car really is in 911s quite unique. It is still a 911, and you can still see the shape of the back end and the way it goes down, but it is measurably different and it is very pretty. This still has that shape that started out in the late 60s, and it hasn't changed very much. Now some people say that the 993 is a much better drive than the 964. The main difference in terms of the way they drive between the two cars is that the 993 has a multi-link rear end. The 964 actually got coilover type suspension and not torsion bars like the 3.2 had, so it was a big step forward, but with a multi-link rear end, this definitely has an advantage. However, some of the detractors of that say that the 964 still has that rawness that a lot of people like about the 911, and the 993 is too civilized. I think the only way to tell for sure is to take them both out and see how they drive. So this is one of the earlier cars. It's a C4. But it drives really nicely on the road. It's a completely standard car. I love those D90 wheels, the flag mirrors. The original ride height I could probably do without, to be quite honest, but it doesn't look great, but on the road it's just a lovely car to drive. You've got that 911 cabin which brings you back to the old Beetles, and the interior is a little bit cramped. You're quite ensconced in it. It's not unpleasant. Weird driving position, quite long reach to the steering wheel, and then sort of scrunched up legs. The engine is a nice, sort of sweet, smooth unit. It feels feels a little bit dead in this car. It's just because I'm used to my own 964, which is considerably lightened and also has a sportier cam. So there's nothing wrong with this car, but you can really feel the extra weight there. You get so much communication from the steering. It's a brilliant, brilliant little sports car. The roads are really, really greasy today, but I can tell you from personal experience that C4s, if they're left as standards, simply will not spin. I mean, you've got to abuse them beyond the pale. And on liftoff, it's just about possible, but that's really on track. You cannot get them to spin. If you push it too far, it will just understeer. It's the way that they're designed. On a day like this, on these roads with somebody else's car, I'm not even going to get close to that in any case. But it gives you a real sense of security. You can drive this car whenever you want, wherever you want. I mean, they're good in snow as well. The only thing that stops them is the limited ride height. The gearbox is really sweet. It's a little bit notchy going down into second, but apart from that, it's rifle bolt precise. Quite heavy, quite long, but nice. It's got a nice feel to it. So Phil from Philip Raby Porsche has once again supplied me with the two Porsches for today's film. This one I think is up for 50. It's had loads of work done to it. I think it's had about 20 grand spent in the last few years. So it's a very good solid car, including engine rebuild, interiors and so on. Phil, by the way, is a very good bloke, very honest dealer. So if you do want to buy a Porsche, I would not hesitate to recommend him. He's a great guy. So this is a lovely example of a very original, unmolested C4, and it's an absolute pleasure to drive. It's not pin sharp. Of course, you wouldn't really expect it to be pin sharp. But the engine's lovely. It drives really, really well. And it still has that lovely 911 charm. If you want an air-cooled 911 that still looks like a 911 but is very civilized, can be driven almost anywhere at any time, a 964 C4 is unbeatable. Yes, if you drive it a little bit harder, it's not quite as sharp as, for example, a C2 would be, or as rewarding, I think, as an SC to drive. But they're just brilliant cars and just excellent and comfortable. I mean, the ride is so much better. It feels so much more modern as a car than an SC or a 3.2. It's got ABS. I mean, it's a car you can use every day. We're now in the 993. This is a left-hand drive. It's a car with only 24,000 miles on it, I think, or less. So it's a fantastic time warp car. And I'm surprised by how different it feels to the 964. The brake pedal is much firmer. I mean, obviously with second-hand cars, there's all sorts of reasons why they could feel different that have nothing to do with the way the cars were originally. But this is definitely a tight-feeling new car. Anyway, the brake pedal is much firmer. The steering is lighter, and it's definitely much happier to change direction than a 964, which felt a lot more sluggish. Part of that will be down to the C4 system. But obviously, 993s had evolved as well, and they are nice cars to drive. The ride actually feels a little bit better as well than the 964. Maybe that's down to that multi-link rear suspension. Gearbox feels pretty much the same. What really jumps out at you about this car is just how different the steering feels. I'm amazed at that. I didn't think there would be such a difference. It's much lighter than the 6.4, but even though it's much lighter, it's a lot sharper, and I don't know, it's almost, it's more communicative, I think. That's got to be down to the C4 system and the 964 that just numbs it a little bit. They're both great systems, but this actually feels measurably better. It's really good. The engine's got a lot more pickup low down. You have to rev the 964 lump to get it to go anywhere quicker. It feels a little bit dead low down compared to this. But this also feels quite happy to rev. Much more alive as a car. Interior wise, there really isn't anything in it. I mean, they've sort of redesigned the door cards and everything else, and there's a few detail changes, but otherwise it's just sort of pure 911, pure 964. Not a lot in it. So this is 24,000 miles and it's up at Phil's place for 70 grand, which I think is a good price for a time warp car like this. That is absolutely lovely. It floats over bumps. And yeah, it feels sharper. Part of this will also be down to the wheels. This has got bigger wheels, low profile tyres compared to the 16 inches D90s that are on the 964. And also to the suspension, but it's just so much nicer to drive. I have spent most of my time as a 964 owner poo-pooing 993s. Well, not poo-pooing them, but poo-pooing how much better they're supposed to be than 964s. But reluctantly, I have to say that between these two particular cars, there's just no comparison. This is much, much nicer to drive. I'm going to be pilloried by some of my 964 mates, but this is so much nicer. I think if it was a 964 C2, it would be a different outcome, to be quite honest with you, because part of the reasons why I prefer this, I think, are to do with the four-wheel drive system on the 964 and not so much the 964 itself. But generally speaking, this feels like a lovely car. I'd be very happy to have one of those. I still prefer the classic 911 looks of the 964s, but the 993s are unique and very, very pretty cars all the same. Thank you all for watching. Thanks for following and supporting the channel. Please like and subscribe, all the rest of those things. Please leave comments. And also, if you're looking for a Porsche, please go to Phil's place. Both these cars are great examples of their ilk. Thank you very much for lending them to me, Phil. And see you for the next one, guys.